shorten this in various ways. Sometimes they'll be an educational project. And I'm calling the talk tonight reintroducing, because I think we've been kind of negligent about keeping the community informed of what's going on with this project. Project's like, almost 6 years old, and it's been almost 5 years since we presented to the community about it. So here at SIM, it's really wonderful. We have lots and lots of new members are coming in all the time. I think probably most of the community now doesn't know really anything about this project. Since the last time we talked about it. So I had all these, here are my intentions for this presentation. Part of it is to let you know that all of these people who were over there in 2007 aren't really kind of crazy. We seem to have this very passionate feeling. We're excited about this project because of the experiences we had with when we met from these when we met over there. And I'm also a little concerned that newer people will feel isolated because they weren't there. They might feel like they did that. I can't be part of that. But this is really an invitation for all of you, every member of this community, to participate in this project and feel attached, or maybe not attached, but connected to it. I'm probably attached to it a little bit. So, and also to explain that this project's a little bit unusual. When I tell people that I'm involved in an educational project, they assume that we're sort of sponsoring a school or building a schoolhouse or somehow like 3 cups of tea, and this project is completely different than that. We are really, this project has started because the women of this group that was self-organized, they decided they wanted to have education for their children. And they, because of the fact that they are of this discriminated caste in India, and the fact that they're marginalized and they can't draw attention to themselves, they have to go about their education in a very special way. Okay, so the whole idea of everything we do with these people is that we are trying to help them ignite their own lives, not keep making them dependent on us. And later you'll meet Sister Mary, and I can tell you some funny stories about how she doesn't let pilgrims give money to these women. These women are supposed to sort of earn it, or be supposed to help them help themselves. Okay, so of course, we'll tell you why I think the Forum for Women's Awakening is very worthy of our support, and actually I think we're quite lucky to have this relationship with them. And then a little more ephemeral is my thinking in the long term. I'd really like to promote two-way exchanges between us at SIM and them over there in Bulgaria. That's my perspective. They have a lot to teach us. Okay, so we can hopefully have a little time to talk about that. Now, when I was thinking about someone who hadn't heard about this project before, there was a very long list of questions. What is it? Where is it? What is it? And it seems to go on and on forever. So I'm going to try to answer all of these as quickly as I can before we get to the part which I think most of you enjoy the most, pictures of the individual schools that we're supporting for elementary age kids. These tend to be called village schools or village education centers. And then there's this one program associated with the National Institute of Open Skills, which is for young adult women. So these are probably women in their early to mid-teens. This is a tricky age for young women in Indian culture because they're marrying age. Okay, so there's a lot of pressure on them to be married, start having children, and basically take care of their families. Okay. And so we'll talk a little about this program. So give you a brief overview of what the program is, saying in a nutshell. It's a cooperative program between the Forum for Women's Awakening in Bulgaria and us. It got started after the 2007 India pilgrims came back. And it's the educational arm of a group of women whose primary function is to make microloans to themselves. Okay, so this is, they make microloans in this model of the guy's name who got the Nobel Prize from Bangladesh. He started this whole notion that there needs to be no one who's making money in between, that people can make microloans themselves, that works fine. And kind of the byline I've adopted for this program is promoting self-sufficiency for the most disadvantaged women and children near Bulgaria, India. And certainly these people are among the most disadvantaged there. Okay, so a little bit more about our partners. Our partner is, I cannot pronounce the Indian. Does anybody speak Hindi here? No? And I've translated roughly as the Forum for Women's Awakening. Here they are in 2007. So Dailt women had two big barriers against them. One is that they're women in a very patriarchal Indian society, and maybe you guys have read the news in the last 6 months about some of the really horrible things that have happened to women, even educated women in urban centers, rapes, burnings, what else, acid thrown on them when they've kind of not followed the family's rules. So you have this as just being a woman, and also these people are at the very, very bottom of the social scale. So these are the untouchable class. These are basically former slaves who are out in the margins. I don't think there's anything like this in our culture. Probably, if you thought of some mixture of freed slaves in the South and Native Americans and migrant workers, mixed all of those kind of things together, and then something that's been going on for 3,000 or 4,000 years, and you get an idea what it's like to be a Dailt. Okay? So these women here decide they cannot rely on the state to help them out, like this huge Indian bureaucracy supposed to help out everybody. So they've adopted this approach of self-sufficiency as the only means to improve their lives, and they organize themselves under this name. And we already talked about they do microloans and education. And our educational project provides the majority of the financial resources for their educational programs. So answering the question, where is this? This is, of course, centered around Bodh Gaya, which is the awakening site. Here's some monks under the Bodhi tree in the early evening. So most of the places we sponsor, almost everything's within about 10 kilometers. Every place I went was slightly closer than that. Of course, Bodh Gaya is the site of the historical Buddha's awakening. The Dailt caste has existed since the Buddhist time. And Dennis Warren likes to make this point that it's quite ironic that at the site where there's this great leap in human awareness, people are still discriminated against and live in a way which existed at his time.
So an untouchable is somebody who's they're actually born into that caste, right?
Yes.
So there's nothing. I mean,
Traditionally, yes. Traditionally, it's actually, my understanding, it fits into the Hindu cosmology. But there's some reason why you're untouchable. Maybe if you do better this time, you might come up with a higher caste next time. It's just so endemic to the way that the Indian culture was organized. I feel like I don't know how to really explain it. But it is true that contact with these people was considered polluting. Okay, so they were considered unreliable. So there's all these social pressures to not have anything to do with them. Okay? Use them when you need them, kind of like migrant workers, but otherwise it's just that. We don't let them go to school, we don't let them have access to water sources, we don't let them go in the villages, all of these sorts of things. It's, to be fair to any Indians, this is largely disappearing in the urban centers I hear, but it's still right in the rural areas. And certainly around Bodh Gaya, this is among the poorest and least developed parts of India.
so where is Bodh Gaya on the map here?
Yeah. So I'll show you that Bodh Gaya is here. I want to basically show you this large view. We're on the other side of the world. So if you call India right now, they're 12.5 hours ahead of us. I wanted to show you this map to make a plug for 3 of the 4 community service abroad projects that are on the SIM website. So about 6 weeks ago, Jeff Harden was talking about Insight World Aid and their medical relief effort that he sent to Cambodia. Okay. And then, Steve Armstrong sponsors, I think it's called Burma Schools Project, where they go over and build schools over here in Burma. Actually, I don't know where they're going. Here's the capital. And then we're going to be up in here. Now, this is supposed to somehow emphasize there's not much in this part of India, but I think it mostly will impress you. I don't really know how to use Google Maps properly. But this is the Ganges Valley, Ganges Plain. So this is where up in here is where the Buddha lived his entire life walking around here. Okay. What other things you would know about? You've probably heard of Varanasi, sometimes called Benares, and Du's way up here. This is Calcutta. This is now the way people prefer to spell, pronounce Calcutta. Yeah. Okay. So this is where all the talk today takes place in this area. This is a very large view of the area around Bulgaria. Okay, so this is the best I could do using the GPS locator on my iPhone, which I carry around in my pocket, and try to map where each of these schools were. And this is actually the route system area I took out to this place one day, but I couldn't figure out how to get all the other things on here. But we'll see 4 different village schools, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then this NIOS Center for Teenage Girls is here. And those of you who are interested in Buddhist history, this area is pretty interesting because, of course, in addition to Bodhgaya, up here are the caves where the Buddha was meditating just before he basically left the ascetic life. Okay, and he traveled down here and crossed this river, and I guess the story is he barely made it across and dragged himself out in this area of where he met Sujata. I'm sorry. So over here is where he met Sujata and took the rice milk and kind of cemented the notion of the middle path as the way to liberation. Okay, so here's the sort of the epicenter of all the Bodhgaya attention. This is Mahabodhi Temple or Stupa in the surrounding park. Mahabodhi means great awakening, and most of the attention gets focused around the backside of this temple where we have the Bodhi tree. So this is early evening in January 2012 when I was there. And I had this nice little movie showing the circumambulation around the Bodhi tree, around the temple, but it takes too long to show that to you. This is the same, incidentally, this is the same trip that Sandra and Julie DeHart were on. I was there at the same time that they started their pilgrimage to India with John Travis and Kristen Toombs about a year and a half ago. Okay, and I think I know some of you have been there, but anybody who's been there will tell you these stories about all the scenes of devotion you see there. So here are some monks looking up at the Bodhi tree. I don't know where these guys are from. I'm guessing they're Burmese, but I don't really know. You know, you'd have to be a stone not to be touched by the emotional energy that's present in this place. I'm not a particularly religious Buddhist, but I'm always blown away by the devotional scenes of devotion I see here. Here's another example of this. It's not a particularly good picture of these guys, but these guys are doing this Tibetan practice of 10,000 prostrations, where they actually have these little sliding machines they built for themselves. I jokingly call these sort of Tibetan workout clothes. But the grounds are just surrounded with people doing this. And this guy, when I was there with the first set of pilgrims, this guy was there anytime I was there. If I was there almost at midnight or 5 in the morning, this guy was here doing his practice. I'm not sure what his practice is, but he's always moving his mala beads while he's sitting there, but he's always here. So it's very, very moving to be there in Bodhgaya. And of course, Sim has some history here. Here's a morning sit under the Bodhi tree. This is Rich here, and I believe this is Jerry Alpin, and here's Diane, Wild, Sandra, Dennis, Lisa Colgis, who is in Mary Alpin. Okay, so why did this group of pilgrims decide to form this educational project? So this is from our website that we had up. This actually got lost when the server went down about a year ago. If anybody on the SIM board wants us to put this up somewhere again, we can do that. I have all the stuff, I just don't have anywhere to park it. And here's this group of pilgrims. Okay, this is a pretty remarkable story in and of itself. Actually, all the current mentors are in this picture except for Jeff. Jeff's not in this picture because he went 2 or 3 years earlier and sort of inspired most of us to go on this trip as well. So you guys might know Jack Garvey, and there's Rich, and Jerry Elkin, and there's Sandra. Who might we see? Dennis. Okay. There's Lisa, Diane. So, okay, and Marilyn, she was here 2 weeks ago, so she interesting. I don't know if you guys I explained to you this is at Nalanda. This is, I believe, to be one of the largest universities that ever existed at the time, about 1000 AD. This was a huge site of Buddhist learning, and when the Mongols came in and destroyed it, apparently the library burned for like 6 months afterwards. Okay, so on the second day we were in India, we met this pretty remarkable Indian woman here. Her name is Sister Mary Lobo. Okay. I'll tell you more about Sister Mary. Here's Christy Tooze, who tends to be the logistics person on these trips. See Rich back here. And we went in these SUVs and out to the edge of town, where we walked through these rice fields, out to a Dailt village. Here's Sister Mary in a very typical pose, explaining something with Diane Sandra. And where we were going to this house where these women in the Forum for Women's Awakening were having a get-together. And here they're putting up some shade, probably for our benefit. And the purpose of that get-together was to celebrate the birth of a baby girl. So this thing is pretty rare, apparently in India, that you celebrate the birth of a baby girl. And so we have 3 generations of women in this family, the baby, the mother, and her mother. Sister Mary here is glowing. I saw these people a year ago in January. This little girl was wondering why I was looking at her all the time. And her mother looks kind of the worse for wear now. But maybe it's because she has at least one young child. Okay. Now, I'm going to show you a little bit of video, which is in the home video category. It came off of my little point-and-shoot camera, and you're going to see it bouncing around as I walk around, but I think it helps really give you a flavor of what was going on that day that we met these women. So here we're walking to the courtyard. Darby slipping in here again. I don't know what he was up to.
आगे सिस्टर के भी हम आभारी हैं कि सिस्टर बार बार हमारे आंगन में इस तरीका के प्रोग्राम देते हैं Her name is Nirmala.
It's a courtyard where we are very protected and safe. So it gets sunny, but in the winter it's quite nice and bright here. We have some of our programs, so it has been very nice programs here in this place. It's a little secluded and cut off from the crowd of the village and makes it more sort of homely here. And she's here to welcome you all on behalf of all the women, and she's also very happy that the women are here and getting to relate to all of us.
तो बार बार हम अनुरोध करेंगे इस तरीका से समारोह बार बार मेरे आंगन में करते रहे हम लोग कुमार को दर्शन देते रहे तो हम लोग आगे बढ़ते रहे इसके लिए बहुत स्वागत
Okay, so what happened shortly after this is that the women got up and explained why they had formed the Forum for Women's Awakening and what they were trying to do. And I think most of the people in the audience, and maybe some people will comment, were pretty blown away by the strength and the clarity of what these women were saying, even though these women basically had nothing. They talked about what their birthright was, what they were due as human beings walking around on this planet, and they're talking about how they're going to go get it. And without offending any feminists in the crowd, I made Western feminists, in my mind, sound kind of marbly about because these guys were just really very clear about it. So anyway, it's made a real impression on me and many other people. Does anybody else want to comment on their experience with the Dailt women? Yes,
I just remember being so moved and just feeling tears coming down my face as they were talking about what they wanted to do with their lives and how they weren't going to be stopped. And it was inspiring, and it was just really inspiring.
Anyone else? So, anyway, so after this very moving experience, here's different people in the crowd, Dennis and Diane. Here's Lisa Clovis. Rich, I'm sorry I got you squinting in the sun here. But or maybe you're still jet lagged. Rich got there a little bit, got to Asia a little bit later than other people, so he was still catching up. And here's Jerry, Elkin, and I. Here's a picture. I'm not showing this to get myself in the frame one more time, but to show the small stature of these women. So I'm bent over at the waist here, and I'm still got my head above her. And so, I mean, I suppose there's some genetic factors that might make these women small, but I'm pretty sure it's the hardship of their life that they're really this tiny. Okay, so I pretty much explained everything on this slide about the Form for Women's Awakening. So who is this person, Sister Mary Lobo, that I keep on referring to? She's basically the interface between sin and the Form for Women's Awakening. She's a very remarkable person. Okay, she's a Catholic nun, same order as Mother Teresa. And she's very clear about saying she's Brahmin caste, so she could have had a very nice Indian life, but she didn't want to be basically a slave to her husband. So she became a nun so she could have some of her own autonomy, and she had always had a passion for India's poor. Her order is based in Goa, but I think I may have this wrong. I think it is in Pune, actually. And she now spends about half the time over there doing some administrative duties. And interesting about Sister Mary, she met Christy Tews during a 10-day Vipassana retreat with Gaia. Okay. When I was there a year ago, January, she didn't have any time seeing on weekends, so she's too busy going to Dharma talks or one-day retreats. So she now describes herself as sort of a Catholic Buddhist hybrid. But she, and for me, she definitely is one of these people that makes me rethink about what's possible for what one human being can do. I mean, she's not a legend like Gandhi or Martin Luther King, but she's someone that I have a very high esteem for. And she's so intelligent and so articulate. I've got a little clip where she's being interviewed here in a few minutes. I'll let her speak for herself. But I thought you guys might be interested to see where the office where the Form for Women's Awakening is. It's down on the southern edge of town, just past the Thai temple, if you guys, anybody remember where that is. You walk up this very ordinary lane and you see this sign, which translated as the Form for Women's Awakening. Turn the corner, and here's the office with the hours posted. And go in there, and there's Sister Mary. And it's too bad Tom, the editor of our newsletter's not here, because she's here. She's reading a copy of the Sin newsletter. I didn't set that up. It just happened to be that way that morning. And so this is her, actually, where she lives, a combination of office, and there's some office material over on the right, and this is obviously where she sleeps. She has a small kitchen over on the other side, and there's a squat toilet over on this side. And if you notice, she has in her hand this little plastic phone that looks like a Nokia phone from probably 10 years ago. And this is how she runs everything in the Form for Women's Awakening. That thing isn't sitting still for very long before someone's calling to check in, and she's chatting with them. And I often joke, I've been in old motorcycle rickshaws going over these rutted roads with her out in the middle of nowhere, and this thing's going off. I often think of her as, she was in the United States, she'd be a CEO in Manhattan in her limousine. So, but she is her best advertisement. I'll let you see this. So I should let that go, but I want to give credit. This is a professionally shot video interview from her from this DVD called Awakening, where three guys about 10 years went over there and focused mostly on women making microloans themselves in third world countries. And in the extra stuff that you get on DVD is this wonderful interview with Sister Mary.
ग्रुप को चुन दिया महिलाओं को देने से अच्छा है giving money to the poor it's like no way doling money out the giver finds sometimes that he's in a superior position perhaps and the receiver becomes like a beggar, so there's a sort of relationship there built in that sort of is, I feel personally, you know, the traditional charities here, we are doing a lot of good, but keeping the people dependent on us. But, so that can be questioned. Perhaps in some situations there's no way out, especially in all these emergencies that we have, like tsunami and other things. Perhaps that's the only thing that can be done. Whereas now with this group approach, I feel you don't have the power. You can put in the capital and okay, but then it's not yours any longer. You can invest a little, but afterwards it belongs to the group. So you don't have much power there, and it's much better for the group itself, or I don't call them the recipients, or the beneficiaries of the program, to develop their own sense of power. They have control over the resources. They're the ones who are going to manage their resources. Builds up human confidence and self-dignity, human dignity. Saris, they put their best saris. Some of the frustrations, I think, very much happens, at least in this part of the country, being women. Being a woman, many people still wonder, can you run an organization? What kind of work? Are you capable of it? Locally, you know. And the big question, women would never venture into work like this or manage microcredit services and so on. So that's a big frustration. Over and over again you come up with the same thing, you know, like sort of pressure and blocking your way and questioning and so on. There is that. Then also the very ethos of this place in this community, society here. Bihar, as you know, is one of the poorest and the most backward states of India. So, and there's a lot of, there is corruption, which could be, of course, questioned, and I don't have data here exactly to show this corruption and that, but there's a climate around the place, and there's a lot of cynicism about the state and the government. So these are some of the frustrations, and so in spite of it all, we have to keep our hopes alive. The whole question of poverty, just crosses my mind that it's a question for all sides to examine ourselves. The poor, why are we poor? And the rich, what can we do about sharing? The poor, perhaps in these developing countries, need to work much harder and think out their policies, question the whole corruption that goes on in these countries. We have to do that in the developing countries. And on the other hand, the rich also, in the same sense, the spirituality that is expected of them is also this transparency, the spirit of sharing, this compassion. It's a whole shift that is called for all over the planet, a sort of a change in human consciousness, a shift in consciousness, the way we think, the way we respond to life, an awakening, as you put it so well. A spiritual awakening is what is all for, I feel, at this moment, the survival of the whole human race on this planet and the planet.
So here they're in her office, and kind of the other orientation pictures I showed you.
The dream is not so much to become rich and rich and richer.
If you don't mind, I'll stop it there because it kind of gets into small software discussion with the interviewer. So, Sister Mary and I made this pretty tight plan for her, giving her a personal reading to the Sim community here. But in late April, she had her thyroid removed, at least a big piece of her thyroid removed, and she still doesn't speak right. So I called her up a couple weeks ago because she was very late on something she said she would send me. And I could tell, of course, her speaking only just from the kind of the rhythm of her voice, but she's very hoarse. So, but today, because she promised she'd send me something by June 20th, I received this thing at 10:45 this morning, which is her greeting, and you guys should appreciate that's 11:15 in the evening, her time. So, so here's what she said. Thank you for arranging this. I guess you guys can read this. Unfortunately, I'm under treatment for a thyroid problem, and my voice is hoarse. I'm extremely sorry I was able to get this. Anyway, in the spirit of outreach, compassionate solidarity with the Sim community will touch the lives of thousands of our poor people in the villages of Bodh Gaya. These marginalized groups have been considered untouchables, outcasts along centuries. We at the Forum for Women's Awakening journey along with these people so they have a sense of dignity, self-esteem, and the confidence to shape a better future. I think she means a better future. From Sister Mary, and I guess the direct translation of how she calls herself, what she calls herself, there's the animator. So she's quite a wonderful person if you ever get a chance to meet her. Okay, so what I wanted to try to do in the next few minutes here is to show you what it means to be Dailt. This is something that I can give you a lot of kind of facts about it, but it's a hard thing for me to grasp experientially. Okay? And anyway, these long list of facts, which I probably put everybody to sleep, basically says that there's about 250 million people in India. About a third of the people of India's population who are in this class at the bottom of the social structure. They live in secluded colonies because they're considered to be either unreliable for personal relationships or else contact with them is considered polluting. Many of the elites, not all of them, but many are decided from the original tribal landholders, so not unlike Native Americans here, and they were enslaved during the Aryan invasion of about 3,500 years ago. But look at what these literal translations of Dailt mean: ground, suppressed, crushed, broken to pieces. Okay. And so I think it's also significant that around Bogai, the elites are known as the rat eaters. So, and basically, this long slide, let me summarize it for you. Basically, so they're given the work that no one else wants to do. It's considered ritually impure to Hindus, so that's why they're considered polluting. Okay. And what really affected me is to see that they're denied access to eating places, schools, temples, and even water sources. Even though this is illegal in India now, it still happens. You can think of this part of India as like the American South during the Jim Crow, but there's no equal part of the separate but equal part in India. Okay, these guys are just supposed to be on the outs. Okay. And of course, this has had a huge impact on their communities, and it's especially dangerous for girls. Okay. And they, of course, have to put up with a sun preference for a son that's true throughout India. Education is generally considered a waste. So, but I was interested in a more experiential understanding of what it meant to be Dailt. And I was hoping I could get this by visiting a few of their homes. So here we are in a courtyard of a actually fairly well-to-do Dailt home. It's going to be one of the schools I show you. And as you look around, you see different aspects of their life. Okay, they're cooking on these very rudimentary mud ovens using cow dung. This explains this part of the horrible air quality in Bogai. And here they are cooking, very simple style. Okay, looks like some sort of some vegetables and potatoes, and it's quite interesting. She's cutting on a knife that's actually buried in the dirt, so she can use her hands to cut it directly.
Michael?
Yes.
Is there something about those people that look like a Dailt?
Yeah. This?
How are, in the population, can you tell a Dailt from a distance?
I can't. I've been walking around in Dailt villages with Sister Mary, and she can see the stratification within the Dailt communities. So, I grew up in the Midwest, and we used to think that all Asian people look the same. And this is kind of, I just don't have that cultural sensitivity that Indians have towards this caste of people. Okay. And I can guarantee you these people are wearing their best clothes today, or maybe most of the clothes they have, because this was a pretty cold morning in the mid-50s. And this is really interesting in terms of the cooking. This woman took some dried chilies and some spices and is making a masala here on a very old mortar and pestle. Okay, this is the main meal here is like at 11 o'clock in the morning. And you look inside their houses, and they're mud houses, okay, but they're extremely well kept. So this barrier presumably keeps water and cold air out. They've got a wooden door, and it's clean and very well kept inside. So there's nothing revolting like you might see in a homeless community here. And I think this part explains why this style of life has endured. Okay, you can kind of, it's okay. It's just medieval in terms of its style. Okay. So it was about a week later that I actually started to get at my first kind of aha about being a Dailt. And this is a time Sister Mary and I had just been to a village school, and we were waiting for a ride to the next place we were going. And, Sister Mary pretty clearly is the authoritarian figure here. She was standing around, and all these women came out and assumed it was time for a microloan meeting. So they came out, and they spread out these are, I think, are basically bags from the grain that they eat. They sat down, and they got ready to have a little microloan meeting, and out came the records of deposits to the group bank account, if you will. Okay. And this is where I first, for me, had my first kind of aha moment. So this is early January, and this is a record of deposits. I believe these are individuals, and these are dates. And if you're a Dailt woman, this is how you prove that you made a deposit to the group. You use your fingerprint. Do not have signature. Okay. Furthermore, you have no idea what this says, okay, so you just have to trust that the person who's doing this for you is not cheating you somehow. Okay, so I found this quite moving to realize, of course, these women are all basically friends, but still there's this very deep level of dependency and inability to function in kind of a modern society. Here come the bank records. So this shows that money that's actually was deposited in the bank. Again, this woman cannot read that. Someone else had to do that for her. And so, sister, and if you notice when these women are sitting around, now they're heavily covered up right here because it's cold, but also there's a very strong tendency among these people, no matter what time it is today, these women to cover their faces a little bit like with a veil, like you'd see in the Middle East. And these are the women, they basically have been conditioned to be secluded, okay? My Sister Mary says that these women are told by the husbands, don't go out of the villages, you can't read or write, people are just going to cheat you, okay? You have no idea how the world works out there, you're much better off to stay back, okay? And just wait for me to come home, basically, take care of you. So,
Michael, are the men the lower class too? I mean, are they Dailt also?
yes, my understanding, they will go away and do day labor work jobs. But increasingly, they're very supportive of these women because they can't deny the income that they're bringing into their homes. Okay, so, and just as, we think that America is the home of the free enterprise spirit, but anybody who really clings to that view hasn't been to South Asia, because this woman spotted me standing there with Sister Mary, and she went and got her little business that she had started with her microloan, okay? So she had been loaned maybe $50 by the Muslim community. She decided to buy bangles and sell them. So those bangles out there are actually these bangles here. I paid less than $3 for them. And she was thrilled to sell me, it was maybe $100 or $200 rupees worth of bangles.
Michael, when you say that the group makes microloans to themselves, do they still have investors, but then the group as a whole decides where the money goes?
They don't have outside investors. They are all, it's like a cooperative, like a savings and loan used to be. Okay, that they make decisions about who they will, within the community, give that large piece of money to.
But I guess what I'm trying to understand is where does the money come from? Is that, for instance, one of the things that we're contributing to, or are there other, I mean, there's a whole international economy of microloans.
Right, and they are not, there's no middlemen here. It's either, so like 10 to 20 of them will put in 50 rupees. And
So they're putting in their own money and
That's
then
right.
directing them to help,
Right.
directing it to help one another.
That's right.
And where do they sell it? Where do they sell it?
So that's a good question, because I asked them, sometimes they go to the road, sometimes they go to the edge of the village, they'll look for tourists, okay? There's something else I wanted to tell you relative to that. And they just don't do things like this. I mean, they were doing things as small as buying a female pig and allowing it to breed with the other feral pigs that are around, and starting this way. So others of them are taking out a loan to patch the roofs on their houses, okay? Some places, I know the 2007 program saw like an entire store that had been set up with a larger loan. But the repay rate the default rate on these loans is extremely low. Okay.
Okay, so they borrow some money to thatch their roof. How do they pay it back?
I don't know about that particular example, but I know that they do things more than make loans simply for starting businesses. Okay. But somehow they must have some agreement with the community about how they're going to repay that money. Okay. But the idea is that they're connected to each other in this, and they're responsible to each other. So, Sister Mary, so I asked Sister Mary, I said, well, you know, Sister Mary, you're getting older. What's going to happen in 10 years when you should really be retired? She's like almost 75 right now. She's going to have more health issues. And she says, there is now an association of these microloan communities in that region of India. And she feels that this thing was largely, within a few years, will be largely self-supporting. So there's a little superstructure of all these communities that are bound together. And her role will no longer be essential in a few years from now. So it's a little harder to see that happening with the things that we do in our educational project. Okay. Now, the reason that, so these women don't want their children to be illiterate, okay? And, but their children have two problems, okay? First of all, the economies of these families are based on these children doing some work around the house. So they cannot afford to send their kids away from school all day. Okay, so they need to have some sort of more flexible way of getting them educated. And in government schools, because the kids don't wear regular clothes, they usually aren't bathed, they have a big disadvantage. And of course, because the prejudices against them have a big disadvantage, and they generally don't do very well. So, so apparently, I don't know any educators out there familiar with this term non-formal education. This is apparently a big, especially in third world, field of the educational process, where you have to come up with a different way of getting these people kind of started with their education. Okay. And what's took a little while for me to appreciate, there's nothing routine about these. So they can't just build a school for themselves, because they'll draw attention to themselves, and then they'll basically be pushed out of that school. And so each school has to be sited in its own village, in a particular location, with the teacher that they negotiated for, and so there's all this sort of village politics that go into how these schools operate. But I'll show you in a minute pictures from each one of these schools. Okay.
So they're kind of like underground? I mean, when you say when they're trying to organize something, they have to make sure that the upper class or to not, when you say not draw attention to themselves, within the village or within the outside, the people looking into the village?
People, mostly I would say it's people looking into the village. I'll show you an example. One school here where they meet in someone's home, and they're right next to the government school. Okay, and it kind of started, we can't have these kids in here because you know how those delete are. And they eventually got pushed out. Okay. So, in my experience, that's how prejudice is. It's subtle, right? But it's pervasive and underlying. Okay, so I've pretty much described all of these things. Okay, so I might have had a little ambition tied up when I agreed that I could be coordinator for this project. There's really only so much more help we can give these people because there's so much supervision needed in each one of these schools. Well, I think we have to keep in mind that we are trying to help them in the ways that they think they need help. They are not going to be doing what we think they should be doing. Okay.
Now the schools are for the boys and girls?
Yes, that's right. You'll see it's kind of, my impression is kind of like an old American one-room schoolhouse. You have kids of all ages. Generally they are elementary school age, but there's clearly are people there who are, she's got the mark of marriage, which is that red in the part line up there. She is there helping out and maybe getting caught up in some of her skills before she goes over to the NIS Center. So you'll see in the movie, I have like a 12-minute movie what these things, what these schools are like. So the village schools are for elementary age school. This is an Indian so-called level 5, which I believe is the equivalent of us getting through elementary school. We are helping support 5 village schools. In what I saw there's 35 to 45 students in each school. There's also this NIOS, or National Institute for Open Schools Center for Teenage Girls. And here they have to show proficiency, I believe it's in 5 areas, and then they pass a national exam and get a certificate. So this might be a little like a GDE in this country, and this certificate can be useful for them to get a job if they can find somebody who will hire them. Okay, so what else haven't I told you about these village schools? They usually meet 7:30 to 9:30 in the morning before the main meal. That leaves kids free to help out with their families in the afternoons. These It's relatively easy for the forum to raise money for teacher salaries, so we are paying for about 55% of everything else that costs. Okay, so school supplies, some nutritional support, things like that. Sometimes we provide supplementary meals for the kids. It's kind of surprising to me, Sister Mary explained, each one of these kids is in principle entitled to a meal a day from the Indian government. But whether you get that meal or not depends how close you live to the main highway. Okay, so the further away you are from the highway, the less likely they're going to bother to bring food out to you. So, sort of makes sense, especially at this time of year when there's a monsoon and you see the roads that they have up there. Okay, so I'll try to kind of breeze through this with this NIOS Center. So this is a tricky time for these girls. You'll see that this girl or young women, this one, they mark are being married. So they're at marrying age, and there's a lot of family pressure for them to not be here. What they're aiming for is this certificate, okay, and actually shows their scores in these 5 areas. And I can show you another picture that shows you exactly what they are. So this Sister Mary is kind of unhappy because only about 50% of the people who have been in this program, like so 6 of 12, have actually graduated. But increasingly, she says, the husbands are asking the wives to come back to the NIOS after marriage. So they're starting to recognize the advantages of this. Okay? So let's go on a rapid tour of these village schools. We'll start in Balahi village. So this is one that seemed to be the furthest out that I experienced. It's sitting basically on this patch of dirt under a thatched A-frame, if you will, right next to the rice fields. These are rice fields at a different time of year. In this winter time, I believe these are oats that are right there. So this is what the school structure looks like. You'll see different charts around. There's a little brick to support one side. This is the teacher, Anita. She's been there for 6 years. There's a thank you from Anita in the video that's coming up in a few minutes. And this is the high-tech aspect of their school. They have a chalkboard and 2 plastic stools to step it on and chalk. And this is what basically all the teaching aids for the teacher to use. Someone stole the dusters, they call it the erasers, so that's not even there anymore. And this is, so, you know, when I go into these places, I'm kind of curiosity, because what's this white guy with gray hair doing out there? So the village really came to see what was going on, and the interesting thing is there's probably as many kids watching out there as there were in the classroom. Okay? And it turns out that this village has decided they really need a second school. And I was hearing some of the politicking that was going on, where it would go and who would be the teacher and all that kind of stuff. That Sister Mary plays a larger role in kind of arbitrating. So I can't really pronounce this Upatiyapika school. This is right on the edge of Bogai, right next to the river. This is the most basic of the 4 schools I saw. It's basically, the kids basically sit on the ground, okay, out in the open. The only aid that they have is this wall that they put some charts on. Okay, a few plastic chairs are there. This is another one of those cold mornings in Bodh Here's the teacher, Gunjan. Now, this is kind of presented an interesting problem. Gunjan, of course, is married, and Gunjan just had a baby and has a very minor birth defect. So this child requires a lot more care than most children. So Gunjan has not been able to come and teach as often as she's supposed to. She's been sending her brother. It was very clear that this was not okay with Sister Mary when she was there, because the brother wasn't doing a good job. So this is typical of what the children have. They either have slates like this little girl, or a paper workbook and a pencil like this boy. So we help buy these supplies with our support of these schools. The next school we'll visit is Turkish school, and we're here at this very unusual day. This is the Republic Day, which is, it's not their day of independence from Britain, but it's the day that they ratified their constitution. And this tends to be significant for Dailts, because a Dailt person played a very significant role in writing the Constitution. So this happens in the courtyard of a home. Here they're digging a hole for the flagpole. Charts are around. Indian, some flags for the Republic Day celebration.
Are the teachers delete also?
Yes,
Are they?
yes. At least that's my understanding, because they come from the same families. And somehow they've gotten sort of a high school type education.
Mhm.
This is all sometimes called the tent school because they paid about $20 for this tarpaulin they string up when it's raining outside to protect the kids. But on this particular day, the kids are sitting on it. Okay? Here they're having a little party after the celebration. I'll show you in a few minutes. So here they're preparing the Indian flag. So, this is part of the program here. You'll see these kids talking about justice for everybody in India, and it's a great place to live, and here these guys are basically the cast-off from society. So Sister Mary thinks it's very important for these kids to identify as Indians and not as Dalits, okay, and to not see that this as an outcast is the real kind of destiny, but to become a member of the Indian society. Here they are having a little party afterwards. This little girl's wearing my down vest because she was shivering. So these kids have got on the best clothes they've got, I'm sure, and hats and earmuffs, things like that. Here's the teacher, Cylinder. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. It's quite an interesting guy. The house actually happens to be, the school happens to be in the courtyard of his mother's house. This is his mother. And what's interesting about this house is that the government school is right around the corner. So here's a picture of a teacher with the school that they were basically kicked out of for no reason other than they were Dalit and they didn't want them in there. So
if the Dalit aren't going to that school, who are going to the government? Who is going to the government school?
So apparently this village is adjacent to another region where other castes are going to school with a regular government sponsored teacher. Okay, and here's probably this school called Kajicha, which is probably the best shape of all the schools I saw. It takes place in a home, in the porch of a home, and it's all brick and it's covered. So this little boy wearing earmuffs because it's cold. Here they are leaving their shoes. We're going to go up into the classroom. Here's the teacher, Ram. Shanti is one of the Sister Mary's assistants, and you'll see her in the video we're showing you. And so this thing seemed a bit more typical of what we would think would be normal. There's actually a chalkboard on the wall and charts. Kids paying attention, kids doing this was addition in her workbook. And of course, if you like kids, these kids can certainly be very charming to school and kind of a novelty. Okay, just a few pictures of the Center for basically high school age girls in our country, this Mania village. So this was among the more rustic villages I saw. All of these homes, the thatch is in pretty bad shape. They've been extensively patched. Here are the girls greeting us. And at most of these places there was a welcoming song when we would go in. So even though the homes are in pretty bad shape, they managed to get to school in a house that actually has plaster on the walls. Okay. Here is the teacher. I didn't get the name. And you can see that several of these, at least two of these girls are married. This girl is married too. She is quite a success story for the school because she gave birth to this baby 4 days after she passed the NIOS exam. So people see her as a real success story. And I don't know, she's probably what, 14, 15, 16 years old at most. Okay, so I'm sorry I'm kind of running long here, but how are we supporting these programs? Basically, we've got ourselves on a footing now where we do a yearly cycle. The Forum for Women's Awakening prepares their financial records for audit every March. The idea is that during this time, Sister Mary and her staff will plan the coming year's budget. So they'll send it to us, and we'll wire them money in April-May timeframe. They received our money this year on May 10th. Okay, so thanks to Georgianne for doing that. And at this stage, this will put people to sleep, but here's the budget from last year. Now, because Sister Mary's been sick, I didn't get the budget until today at 10:45, so it's in the next slide. But it basically breaks down into 3 areas. Children's education, and this is not as simple as it may sound when I say children's education. and also funding for education for women. So there's a very interesting video that I don't have time to show you, but how they are actually educating the women about how to be proper members of a collective. They're spending money, pooling their money and spending it together. Last year, there was quite a bit of consternation about, they had actually asked for money for a water pump. Okay, so I want to be really clear that some of the things that we are starting to fund over there are not strictly educational. But I think this water pump is in a village which has no water supply in the summer. I think most of us would agree that having water is kind of precursor to paying any attention to going to school or being educated.
Is RS for rupees?
I'm sorry, so these are all in rupees. The conversion is roughly 40 or 45, but it's probably easier to divide it in half and chop off a zero, approximately. Some office supplies, okay. So,
This is an education question,
Yeah.
but in India, do they write with the alphabet of our alphabet, or do they write in different? What do they
I
teach?
saw them writing in both the Hindi alphabet and the English alphabet.
And so they're teaching both of those?
Yes.
That's what
That's
so
my
that's what their
understanding.
literacy would be, is for English and the
Yeah,
Hindi?
that's my understanding. Now, you have to kind of understand, I was like a sponge when I went over there, and I was just kind of soaking up all the stuff that was flying by, right? And I didn't really have a chance to debrief with Sister Mary on this, but that's definitely my impression, okay?
It might be Bengali in that region other than Hindi, I'm not sure.
It might very well be Bengali, yeah.
That was the Hindi alphabet, though.
Was it?
Yeah, the pictures that they were
Okay,
showing in the
good.
classroom.
There'll be a movie a little bit where they're actually calling out from the alphabet, so if you know it, you can help us out here. So there is something that came over this morning, which I looked at very carefully, but it this year's budget. So last year we were very fortunate, we were actually to raise the $2,500 that I told Sister Mary I thought we could probably do every year. We developed this new source of people donating money through our Facebook site. But half of these donations came from my family. It's a present to me, because I said, come on, maybe to the people. So most of it came from people like you going directly to SIM. And a little concerned because about $1,000 of this came from Dennis's Warren's one day in December. So we're looking for a way to engage the community some more. So of course this year we've got started on about $500, and we've got about $2,000 left to go here. So
Until when?
I'm sorry?
Until when?
Till basically May of next year,
Oh.
when we wire the money again. We have emptied our bank account for that wiring that showed up there May 10th, and then we'll need to load up again this year. So we won't have time to develop this topic, but I really feel strongly that the thought is that we're sending money over here, but these women have a lot to offer to us. And I'll just put out here a quote from Sister Mary: when you know the experience of poverty and deprivation of our poor people, and yet their calmness, okay? So their minds are different than ours, okay? We can all join hands, work together for one way of life. And I was on retreat at Spirit Rock this year, and I met Sally Armstrong, who's been doing some teaching of Dailts, teaching meditation to Dailts in Bulgaria. And she says that the starting point for their mind is completely different than ours. They don't have this problem of agitated, busy mind, because they have such a simple life. I mean, it's not a life that we necessarily choose, but it's a very simple life. So they have something that we work very hard to get back to that exists for them kind of naturally. And so I would like to do more to promote things coming back. Now, I left a little flip in one of these solid-state video cameras with Sister Mary when I was there a year ago, and I had, even though I set everything up with the new and the cyber cafe and in Bulgaria, it's been very hard to get something back from her. So I have to find a way of getting this going. And so part of it is that we have to find a better way of maintaining routine contact with Sister Mary. You know, when I actually called her 2 weeks ago, it was the first time I'd actually called her on the phone. She has that cell phone with her everywhere. I can call her for pennies on Skype, so I'm just going to have to start doing that more often. Maybe be a little more active and proactive in questioning what they might need. There are some tools that I've been seeing around that I think would be very useful for them. Like, there's this big group in Sacramento, I think it's even at UC Davis, who makes solar ovens, so you don't have to use dumb to heat your fires. So these things are small. No one, unless you went into the village, you wouldn't know you had it. Also, there's a group I saw in the Bay Area now who does small-scale solar lighting, so just a little light source that you can charge in the sun. I think it costs like $5 per light source to get these things going. And I know that, out of respect for Jeff, I want to say something about medical missions there. Jeff actually called Sister Mary and asked if she would like to have an Insight World Aid type group come there, and she basically was not that responsive to your request. Didn't you say that's
Yeah, this is about 2 years ago, and she referred me to the Root Institute. That's a Buddhist educational organization that has a clinic there in Bodh Gaya, and they do some outreach, and they didn't have capacity to host us either. So I'm hoping, I think maybe it's time to ask her and them again, if it's possible, because I think it would be nice to bring people from this community. I mean, that'd be one way to have that two-way dialogue, is actually go there like you did, which is a big thing, but maybe we could actually have a service mission. And maybe it doesn't have to be medical, maybe it could be some other project.
I know Georgiana Turner and Jeff Watson are going to be going on the trip around Mount Kailash. I don't know if any of you guys are, and they plan on stopping in Bodh Gaya. And Jeff has some expertise in, he's not an electrician, but maybe in plumbing. And so he's trying to see, because there's something they can do while they're there to help out, and it's, you kind of have to push them to see, but things like that are the best way. I think they do better probably with small numbers of us rather than large numbers of us, because a bunch of Caucasians show up and go up to the village, it's certainly going to attract a lot of attention.
And can you talk a little bit about what it means to draw attention, and what would the implications be for them that might be negative?
In a way that was probably satisfy you, I don't think I can. But
I just mean, it sounds like it would be bad to draw attention. Is that what you're implying here?
Certainly, I've been led to believe that they find that those sorts of things end up being counterproductive for them.
And what is that? Is it the other people get jealous and might want to take it, or?
Yeah, or might want to push them out of it, or it. I really don't know the answer to your question.
So you just sense that it's a very sensitive area.
Well, there were stories from the women that the 2007 pilgrims met, where the basic, Bodh Gaya is now a World Heritage Site. So they're busy cleaning up Bodh Gaya to make it nicer for people like us to go there. But these women tell stories about how their house was pushed over by the government because they wanted to clean it up somehow. So, maybe they just have a status problem, but they feel that they don't want to attract attention to themselves. And this is a group of people that aren't allowed to wear shoes in the front of other castes. So I think it's hard for me to understand what's going on there. So what can you do? So this is I don't always have a good answer for people that say, what can they do more to help? I don't like to say, well, just give money, because I think that's a very satisfying answer. It might be useful for you to do things like I have a number of phone-backed 11 by 17 posters. Maybe you could have that in your home or your office, maybe with a small donation bowl. I've not done anything going out to the other sanghas in the area. Maybe we could do better promotion there. Our Facebook page has sort of been taking off recently. We have like 300 likes now. I don't know if that will turn into more recognition and maybe more fundraising for it. I am trying to get out a regular newsletter now. I do think it's probably time for interested people. I know that people like Joette and Sandra Seegers have told me that they're interested in helping out. I don't like the idea that I'm kind of making most of the decisions for SIM. I mean, I do come to the board whenever anything large has to be decided, but I think it might be better to have some sort of steering committee. I'd be very interested if anybody wanted to participate. It could be something very informal, maybe just once or twice a year. But now, hopefully, if you don't mind indulging me for about 10 or 12 minutes, there's a movie will give you a much better idea of what these schools are doing, right? Oh, and an unfortunate part of me holding the camera is that my voice is also closest to the microphone, so there'll be some embarrassing thing coming out of my mouth at different times. So, was me, not me. So. Namaste.
4 बजे 4
Oh, Babu लोग हो They thought you many are coming. Sir को. Michael, we must take a photo of yours. How do we put it? और एक डालना. रमा sir को sir. Oh, madam को भी. Oh, madam को. How do we photo?
Turn around to be seen.
Yeah, your face is there.
Okay.
प्रणाम सबको देख सकते हैं अच्छा ओह कितना सुंदर बहुत बच्चे
आते हैं सिस्टर इधर बड़ी लड़की जो पढ़ती थी ना
उसने उधर बताया उसने वहाँ स्वागत किया आपका 2 शब्द
आप हमारे सेंटर पर आए हैं बहुत बहुत खुशी एवं बच्चों की तरफ से बहुत बहुत खुशी
थैंक यू फॉर कमिंग टू आवर सेंटर
एवं जो है हम लोग जो है बहुत खुशी हुए और यहाँ जो है हम इस सेंटर कभी चलता नहीं था पढ़ाई के मामले में कुछ भी नहीं जानता था बच्चा
लोग
और 6 साल से हम यहाँ पढ़ा रहे हैं
From 6 years
और
I'm
यहाँ
here.
का बच्चा लोग जो है आगे 10th क्लास में पढ़ रहा है
Some of the children have gone up to standard 10. बहुत अच्छा सब
और
इधर के
मेरे यहाँ
बच्चे
जो है 45-50 बच्चे यहाँ तक कि जो है कुछ लड़कियाँ छोड़ दी थी पढ़ाई तो फिर उन लोग जो है हस्बैंड उनका बोला कि पढ़ाई जो है फिर करो तो इन लोग बड़ी लड़की लोग फिर आने लगी
See, there were some big girls, they were studying but they got married and went away and their husbands have told them go back and finish your studies.
Oh,
But yeah.
So they can't come back.
But now they come back.
Oh.
The husbands can go back, you know.
Oh, good.
The first marriage, second marriage, they don't go all of a sudden, they go in stages like. So now they've come back. कौन लड़कियां हैं बड़ी
है देखिए एक ये है
Oh yeah, I thought I saw the.
ये है इधर आने लगी है ये है
NIOS का तैयार होंगे ये लोग NIOS वाला
NIOS तो तैयार होगी पर जो है इन लोग के माता पिता से पूछना पड़ेगा
You like them for the NIOS, you say no, better be, they'll go back, they'll start and they'll go back again. That's a real problem with this.
यहाँ के बसंती थी ना एक पास की थी लेकिन फिर भी उसको शादी हो गया तो
There were some very nice girls from this village, but they got, and really did 2 subjects or something, but then they discontinued in that NIOS program.
Oh.
And then there's so much of pressure from the family, the parents, the in-laws to get them
तो तुम लोग अपना पढ़ाई करते रहो जैसे पढ़ाई देखना
कुछ क्या क्या बहाना अभी क्या करेगी जल्दी से अच्छा where's the duster she said that it's gone old she gave it to the girl that girl has not come and she's gone away so the duster they keep the duster they keep board कहाँ रखती है रात को
बोर्ड यहीं रखते हैं
इस घर में she keeps the board in this house कल से एक कपड़ा चाहिए
हाँ ठीक कपड़ा हम दे देते हैं यहाँ रख देते हैं जब तक कर देते हैं
आप अपने प्लास्टिक के सामान में लाएंगे सब चाट के साथ अच्छा तो कौन आएगा बस हाँ लुक लड़का लोगों को कुछ आता है कि नहीं आता
तो भीड़ के जोड़ भी आता है सिस्टर
The boys also एक लड़का को बुलाइए सामने वो लड़का का नाम क्या आपका अनीता बहुत आसान है जोड़ इसका कुछ
Making movie.
This is Shanti. पढ़ सकता है कहाँ तक पढ़ सकता है कहाँ पढ़ कौन लेता मास्टर लेता मैडम लेती कि आपने लिखा कहाँ तक आता है हाँ हाँ और जो जोड़ घटा उसको लड़का काम है आम बना के दिखाओ कॉपी पर दिखाओ कुछ नहीं आता हूँ
She gonna reach one?
होली का दिन है गया
it's a festival that's come
बाल्टी में रंग घोल पिचकारी में रंग भर और गीता पर छोड़ दिया गीता का सर सारा कुर्ते लाल हो गया वह घोर लगी विनोद ने बहन को प्यार किया और बोला
कौन सा देश
कि जो सब देशों का संभाल जहाँ गंगा जमुना कि जिसकी बड़ी बुद्ध ने गोद जहाँ गांधी जी का अवतरण बंदूक हुआ भारत विदेश महान सदीके है जिसकी पहचान सखेवा का कौन सा देश
कैसा देश बताइए कौन सा देश देश के बारे में क्या बोलता है गौतम बोलिए क्या है देश के बारे में क्या है बोलिए देश के बारे में बुद्ध के गोद this is all about India. It's a great country, the land of great people, the land of flowers and jungles. और क्या सब बच्चे इधर तुम खड़ा हो जाओ Now the real function begins.
Okay.
Anyway, you got a good chance to be. झंडा नहीं दे रहा है आप लोग ओहो What do we do? रुकिए 2 मिनट 2 मिनट What do we do? I think we keep.
Can we wait just for 1 minute? Take pictures?
Either we have that. अच्छा तो सर
Is it because this is also for welcoming you? Or?
Yeah. सबको झंडा देना जनगण मन सब जानते हैं अच्छा अभी क्या पूछना बोलिए वेलकम सॉन्ग आइए और लड़कियाँ नहीं ठीक है हाँ तो ये किनारे रह सकती है स्वागत के लिए बस हाँ इधर देखना और लड़कियाँ बस थोड़ा
They're all matching too.
अभी बाबू धुआं नहीं चाहिए प्यारी देवी धुआं को बुता दो क्लाउडी डे गाइए और अच्छा से हम लोगों को देखकर गाना है सब मुस्कुरा के नाचते हुए वेलकम सॉन्ग ऊपर देखना हमको देखना है How can I welcome you?
want your blessings.
Maganda para yun. At saka
भारत माता की माता की महात्मा गांधी की रानी लक्ष्मीबाई की पंतप्रधान की
all the slogans. Wherever you want, you feel free to do your work. अब सब ज्यादा बनाओ को ऐसे भी भारत माता की
अभी जनवरी अभी जनवरी अभी जनवरी
Poor thing, she's shivering in the cold.
That's what she wants my jacket.
I was watching this.
That's what she wants my jacket.
For the time being, it's okay.
No, not right.
But that's it. Oh, my shawl, she could use it.
Yeah, please give her that. It's very, so big for her.
Now, who tell me come pray wo? Oh,
Like a dress.
And here we are thinking about ready to die for the country and keep our make everybody else free, and we'll see that there's no hunger, and we'll die for justice. Here we are.
Very inspiring. Look at it.
Okay. No, Michael, you want to stand? Michael?
Okay, well, sorry I run over so much, but that was all that I wanted to say tonight. If any more questions, I'd be happy to answer them, or if anybody wants to come up afterwards. Thanks for your attention. Oh, yeah.
I would just like to say thank you for being there for this project, for spearheading it, and for helping us to all feel a part of it and participating in it. I'm just so grateful for being a part of SIM and for being a part of a group that has someone like you to help support this.
Thank you. And of course, it's happening because you guys are supporting the project. So this is an open invitation for you. This is someone needed to do it to kind of get it going again. And the invitation is there. Please step forward or go over there and visit. You'll be a celebrity, I'm sure. Anybody else? Okay, thank you all.